teacher at the Mid Private High School. Today we're talking about passive voice and active voice, okay? Before we go to passive, before we go to active, let's just say what is voice, all right? Voice, its literal meaning, it means sound, but in grammar, it's something else. In grammar, what is voice in grammar? Voice is a form of verb that shows whether it is received or done by someone or something. This is called voice. We're talking about the grammar. As I mentioned earlier, its literal meaning, it means sound. But in grammar, voice is a form of verb that shows whether it is received or done by someone or something. I'll tell you what it means. When it is received, it is passive. When it's done by something or someone, then it is active voice. Okay, voice, there are two kinds of voice. Voice is divided into two kinds. First one, active voice, and the second one, passive voice. First, let's talk about active voice. What is active voice? Active voice shows that the doer of an action functions as a subject in a sentence. When the doer of an action functions as a subject in a sentence, that's called what? It's called active voice. Generally, we use a lot of sentences in active voice, right? Okay, and what's passive voice? Passive voice shows that the doer of an action functions as an object in a sentence. That's called passive, okay? And one important question, why do we use passive voice? All right, why do we use it? Why is passive voice used? So number one, when the subject is unknown. When you don't have information about the subject, you use passive. The second one, when the subject is not important to mention. When you don't want to mention the subject, then you use passive voice. Of course, as I told you earlier, we use active voice a lot in our sentences, but there are some occasions that you don't want to mention the subject or you don't have information about the subject. So in that case, you have to use the passive voice, okay? So now let's talk about how to change active sentences to passive sentences. There are some rules, okay? Let's start. Okay, how to change an active sentence to passive sentence? Okay, let's read. And verb, the first rule, verb has to be transitive. Verb has to be transitive verb, which means any transitive verbs can't be changed. If you don't know what transitive and intransitive verbs are, you should watch the previous video if you haven't watched. Okay, so verb has to be transitive, right? Number two, follow the following 5-step rule. 5 steps rule, okay. What are those 5 steps rule? Number one, okay, 5 steps. Number one, identify subject, verb, and object. You should know what is subject in your sentence, what's your verb, and what's your object in the sentence. After that, when you did that, swap subject with the object, object with the subject. It means change. Change subject with the object and object with the subject, okay? The third rule, the third step, change verb to verb 3, or you can say change verb to the third form of the verb, or change verb to the past participle form of the verb, okay? After that, add an appropriate helping verb before the third form of the verb. By appropriate, I mean that in accordance with each tense, every sentence, every tense, and also the sentences that you change from active to passive, they have their own helping verbs, okay? So helping verb should be appropriate and it should be in accordance with the tense. So add an appropriate helping verb before the third form of the verb. In the 5th step, add a body phrase before the subject when you change subject with object. So after that, the last step, subject. So add a body phrase before the subject, okay? Let's just write some examples and then we'll change those examples to passive voice. Okay, the first example, he speaks English. This is an active sentence. Why? Because the doer of the action it functions as a subject here, right? This is why we call it active sentence. Now, when we want to change this sentence to passive, let's just look at the rules. Number one, verb has to be transitive. Okay, let's look at the verb. Is it a transitive verb? He speaks English. Transitive verbs are those verbs which follow the object directly. Okay, he speaks English. This is the object, so this verb is called transitive verb. Why? Because it follows the object directly. Okay, so the first rule is, okay, there's nothing wrong with it, because the verb is transitive. After that, let's just go with these 5 steps. Number one, identify subject, verb, and object. What's our subject? Here it is, subject. Underline subject, okay? What's the verb? Speaks, okay? This is our verb. And what's the object? English, okay? This is our object. Now we identify subject, verb, and object. After that, the second step, swap subject with the object, okay? So, let's write here, English is the object. We should bring it in place of subject. So we have to write here, English. Okay, English. And he is a subject. When you want to change that to object, it becomes him. It becomes what? Becomes him. Okay. So now we did the second step too. Change verb to verb 3. Change verb to a third form of the verb. Okay, what's the verb? Speaks. So we have to change speaks to verb 3. The third form of speak, that is spoken. So that's right here, English. Okay, spoken. Spoken. Alright? After that, okay, the fourth step, add an appropriate helping verb before the verb 3. Okay, let's look at a sentence. What tense is it? Alright, this is simple present tense. He speaks English. So the helping verbs of simple present and active that are do, does. But be careful in the passive, we use is and are. Okay? English, singular. So we use is with it. Alright? English is spoken. And the last step, add a body phrase before the subject. What was our subject? Him. So we use what? By before him. Okay, now we have changed sentence to passive. English is spoken by him. This is passive sentence. Okay. Again, recognize subject, verb, object. Change subject with the object and object with the subject. Change verb to third form. Add an appropriate helping verb before the main verb, and after that use a by phrase before the subject. Okay, that's it. There's nothing hard about it. Okay, let's write another example and we'll change that to passive, okay? Okay, we play football. How do we change this sentence to passive? Again, let's look at the rules. Number one, a verb has to be transitive verb. Okay, let's just find out about the verb. Transitive verb and transitive verb. Play. After that, we've got direct object, right? So we say this is transitive verb. So the first rule is correct. There's nothing wrong about it. The second one, identify subject, verb, object. Okay, let's identify them. What's our subject here? Okay, we're subject, verb, and object. Okay, so the second step, swap subject with the object. Let's do that. Let's write, this is our object, so we have to bring it to the beginning of the sentence. Football, and we. This is subject. When you want to swap it with the object, so you have to write it here, we like us. Okay? And the other step, the third step, change verb to verb 3. Okay, what's verb here? Play. What's the third form of play? It's played. Played. Okay, now we did that too. The fourth step, and an appropriate helping verb before the third form of the verb. Okay, this is all simple present tense, right? So football is played. In the last step, add a by phrase before the subject. By us. Football is played by us. Okay, again, active sentence, we play football. Passive sentence, football is played by us. So that's how we change an active sentence to passive. In the next lesson, inshallah, we'll talk about how to change present tense sentences from active to passive, how to change present continuous. And we'll talk about tenses, the changes of active sentences to passive, and lots of different tenses. Until then, have a nice time. Goodbye.